everybody. Welcome to another exciting, fun-filled episode of Radiorama. And as the name implies, I show you how to work on radios and other things that run on glowing vacuum tubes from the 1930s through about, I don't know about the 1960s, but maybe I need to say something different because I work on all kinds of stuff. Now, this is, I know, probably a repeat of an episode, or at least a model that I've had on this channel many times. It's one of these Zenith high fidelity AM FM not stereos, AM FM radios. Yeah, guys, you're gonna have to excuse me a little bit. Our museum's big event was yesterday, and I promised myself I wouldn't work on radios, but somehow here I am, and I'm exhausted. This one is in extraordinarily nice condition. Like, it looks like it just rolled off the factory floor. Most of the time they just work. They're very well engineered. They're very solidly built. They used really good quality components. Hence the name Zenith. And their motto, which was the quality goes in before the name goes on. And I hear a little bit of a hum. There should be some pilot lights that are up in here. I think they are burned out.
Stomach pain. Don't use Veosa if you have cirrhosis, severe kidney problems, kidney failure, or take CYP1A2 inhibitors. Ask your doctor about Veosa. To learn more, call 1-866-239-1637 or go.
All right, well, I can't tune it. The string is broken, which is not uncommon, but it works. Now, I heard a little bit of a hum. It's not unusual. It probably means the filter caps are starting to get tired, and you should replace them. I think this is a very late version of this radio. I'm going to guess probably around 1960, 61-ish or so. Can't be after 1963 because we have the civil defense markings. And I used these from 1955 to about 1963. Then they stopped because we had ICBMs, and that would do no good because by the time you tuned into the radio station, we would be obliterated. So let me take the back off. I'm just curious what's brewing underneath because some of the later models, I can tell if they're late. I think this is very late, but I can tell also by what the complement is inside as far as the speaker setups go. This one's kind of like opening King Tut's tomb, except, I don't know, not really, since it's only been 60 years since this was built. Anyhow, the screws holding the back on kind of all made a cracking noise when I pulled them out, and there's no marring on the edges. And I opened this up, and I don't think anyone has been in here since this was built in the factory. We've got all the original factory tubes in it. I don't see any fingerprints. I don't see any, if someone had worked on this, like some of that would have been disturbed. This is a much later model because we have a permanent magnet paper cone tweeter versus what they were using, which was piezoelectric. And those were extremely unreliable and didn't last very long. So they found that out rather quickly. And towards the end of this model, they started using these. It's much better. So that tweeter probably still works fine. But, and the tape is still on there from the factory, and you have to take these off to get the chassis out. That's why these are so good. The fact that you can build something and 60 years later it works, it's amazing. Well, I took it out of the cabinet and cleaned it up. And it is one of the cleanest examples that I've seen of one of these. Then again, it helps that these are pretty well sealed up in the cabinet. And I took the bottom off, and I can tell you from experience of working on many of these, I'm just looking up and down just to make sure. No one's ever had the bottom off of this before. This is all factory original. The original electrolytics, the original paper capacitors, original everything. But before I start on this, I'm going to fix the broken dial cord, and I believe that entails taking that front plate off with these screws. Boy, did that take the wind out of my sails. Sometimes it's humbling how difficult restringing things can be, especially when you can't find a stringing diagram. This took me close to an hour because the second string, you need to make sure it runs behind the first one on the drum. And then also the spring that it connects to has an opposing force pulled on it. So you have the primary spring that runs this and the tuning condenser. Then you have this, which, what am I talking about? That does run the tuning condenser. This other one runs the indicator. But anyway, I kept on trying to run it the other way, and it just wouldn't work. Like, it was like a tug of war. And I was like, you know what? Like, of course, like, you would need an opposing force. So now it works like a champ. So I'll put the metal plate back on, and then that sure looks like, it sure looks like a Mallory capacitor. That sure is that blue color ink that they used. I would not be surprised if that's a Sprague. If it is, I bet it's good, but probably will replace it anyway. But we'll find, because that's right. I'm sorry, it was making kind of a hum, so forget that. Scratch it. That's getting replaced. Okay, I'm actually feeling like I'm running out of juice. I'm really tired from yesterday, but what I'm going to do is try to replace the electrolytics. That's the hardest thing to do in these. Sometimes people get upset because they're really crammed in here. Not crammed in here, they're just in an awkward location. Like, you see this tan color? That is the underside of the electrolytic capacitor. And there's little shapes that are embossed in there. And those represent the shapes that you can see that are printed on the side of this can here. You can kind of see like there's a half moon and a square there. And I know from experiencing these are all 40 microfarad capacitors, except for the one that has the square stamp, which is right there. And that is 80 microfarads. Everything in here is chassis ground, which makes relocation of your negatives a little easier if you need to. And I know also by experience the one in the back here has a yellow lead that goes off of the output tube. And so there's plenty of other locations where you can attach a negative to the chassis, because this is a floating chassis, not a floating, wrong. Scratch that. Like Willy Wonka says, reverse it. This is a hot chassis, but it has safety features like nylon to isolate the user from shock. But anyway, you're replacing each of these individually with these guys. These, well, not this many. I just grabbed these out of my car. They're in my coffee cup holder because I forgot to get them out of there. Don't ask me why. I'm going to replace each section, because there's 4 inside of this. There, yeah, 4 sections inside of this electrolytic with 4 individual one of these, except for this one, which is 100 microfarads. That'll replace the 80 microfarad, which is a square shape. All right, well, got part of it recapped. You can see what I mean? Like, if you have the ability, you can move your electrolytics around. Here's one. Here's another. Another. And then the last one is hidden underneath all that stuff here. And I try to make sure that when I replace capacitors, especially the non-electrolytic ones, that in an FM set, when I kind of keep things approximately located where they were. Because at FM, in many cases, the wiring itself is a little bit of a part of the tuned circuit. Because if you ever watch what happens when you tune, say, an FM tuning condenser versus an AM tuning condenser, it takes very, very, very little movement to change the station on that thing. And so they're way, way, way more susceptible. That's my wife filling up the watering can. Susceptible to, I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, let me test it. I want to make sure it still works, because last time I did this, I wasn't paying attention when I did, and I miswired something. So before I replace anything else, which really there isn't much, there's 1, 2, 3, there's only like 4 capacitors left. So if I messed up, it'll be there. Welcome back to day 2 working on the Zenith. And I got a good bit of it done yesterday, mostly just all over on this side. The electrolytics have all been replaced, and a good bit of the paper capacitors that were difficult to get at. But there's a good decent amount of them left. There's this one and these 2. That's paper as well. It's just sealed up inside of a Bakelite case, and those go blowy uppy just like the rest of them, so you got to replace that. And as this one is the across the line cap, you need to replace it with an across the line rated capacitor in modern terms. Now, one thing I also need to do is replace this. This is a selenium rectifier, and they will Now, it could take a long time. They will eventually go bad. And when they do, and they short, they're going to release very smelly, rotten egg smelling smoke that you do not want in your house. Number one, it smells awful. Number two, it's partially toxic. So, good enough reason to replace it. But before I do that, I'll replace the rest of these paper capacitors. Sometimes, if you see a capacitor like this, well, these are called bumblebee capacitors. And you would read this as 47,000 picofarads, which equals 0.047 microfarads. But the capacitor we're going to replace it with is rated 0.01. It's just an across the line cap. It's not going to matter one iota. Also be aware of some that hide. There's one here. There's one here. Just make sure you get all of them because none of those guys are reliable and they should all be replaced.
Sweat stains on the east side. Two kids on a long drive. Blackout in the bathroom. We don't have to talk about it. Fist fight, a crash spot. Thrown out with a brush cut. Kiss me if you want to, but we don't have to talk about it. There is something to the feeling hanging out the window.
All right, I realize I just completely jumped the gun and ruined the episode. So I'm not totally done yet, but I accidentally, not really accidentally, semi-accidentally forgot to film large chunks of this because I just got carried away. I was just thinking about things. This is the month that my grandmother died, and every year that it comes around, whether I'm really thinking about it or subconsciously thinking about it, I don't know. It's just kind of like there, and she kind of, I really think, helped mold me into being the kind of person that I am, and I feel that this time of year I especially miss her because summertime meant going out to the farm and seeing Aunt Janice and Uncle Henry and everybody and eating watermelon, which my wife, by the way, despises. I don't love it that much either, but anyway, that was part of summer. And, fireworks, barbecue, that kind of stuff. And it was just a wonderful time of year. And my grandmother lived to be she almost lived to be 97 years old, either 97 or 98, I can't remember. And I remember I talked with her on the phone every week if I could. We would talk on the phone when I was commuting back and forth to work, and we would just talk about things. And so I was just thinking about that, long story short. And I've restored so many of these that it becomes automatic. And so I forgot to film a large part of it. So what I'm going to do tomorrow is disassemble it and show you what I did. Because what I've done is I added a replacement of this nasty selenium rectifier. And I also added the audio input, even though this already has one in the back here. Here is the isolation transformer I added, this weird blocky thing. That's what that is. And that's isolating the audio that's coming in through it. And by the way, what I'm doing here is not safe. Do not do this because I'm an idiot and don't do what I do because it says that, the disclaimer. This thing sounds amazing. That's why I was like, you know what? Like, I feel bad for not filming part of this, but I was like, I'm really enjoying the way this sounds. Like, it genuinely sounds good. It's a pleasurable experience. And I think, again, it's because you've got a sealed cabinet, well, almost sealed cabinet, good solid cabinet, a big speaker for its size, and then a tweeter, an actual tweeter that works. And it's just a really nicely designed, sensitive radio / device you could listen to your music on, or whatever you want to listen to. I don't care. You could listen to about kangaroo boxing or something for all that matters. I have to admit another thing too is that I got distracted because like, you know what, I really need to like make sure I give a little love and attention to the car here, and I've been trying to get the stupid exhaust bolts off because they got a crack, and exhaust pipe, and I'll get it off there and weld it in there, but I've not been able to get it loose with my air hammer, or my air wrench. I'm going to have to admit defeat and take it to the shop, and I hate doing that. But tomorrow I'll film how I did that and conclude the episode. Okay, well, here is day 3 of working on the Zenith. I could have finished it last night, but I've just been really kind of taking my time with this one because I'm going to see, possibly, I don't know, about buying this from the museum, because I don't have one of these, and I've worked on so many of these, and I think it'd be an awesome radio in the kitchen because it picks up FM really well, and my wife listens to the radio a lot. So what I did is I replaced the original selenium rectifier with this. That little black thing right here with the stripe. That is the modern diode. And but you can't just stick it in there willy-nilly. It's more efficient than the selenium was, so it'll get a little bit too much juice running through your set. So you need to tamp it down a little bit with that resistor. The rest of the capacitors have been replaced, and then I put an actual across the line rated capacitor for the one that goes across the line. I cleaned all the controls here, and I cleaned the wafer switches for the bands. So now what I'm going to do is put the bottom on it and do a final reassembly, and hopefully it still works. Right on. Just found out that Ozzy Osbourne died. I mean, granted, the man smoked more cigarettes and drank more alcohol than I think was humanly possible, and he lived to be in his 70s. But, you know what? Seemed like a nice person, and he put out some good music over the years, so good luck, buddy. Anyway, Ozzy sounded pretty good on the Zenith. I got it all back together again. Maybe give it one more little cleaning, but I think that's going to call it quits for this episode, even though it was shortened because of my stupid filming mistake. I really like to get that off of there, but that doesn't seem to want to come off. Oh well. Anyway, thanks so much, everybody. Until the next time an episode comes across my radio bench. See you guys later. Bye-bye.